My name's Kathryn Green, and I am part of the Canada Running Series community team, and I'm also a holistic nutritionist. So today I'm going to be talking to you about all things nutrition, connecting it to running and women's health. So I actually work in private practice here in Toronto, and I specialize in women's health, sports nutrition, gut health, and eating disorders. And so I do see a lot of runners and athletes in my practice on a day-to-day basis. So figured this was a great opportunity to chat with you guys about some things that I think more women should know when they're getting into training, when they're getting into running. So we're going to go over why women need to fuel differently, why and how nutrition impacts performance and hormones as well as recovery. And yeah, if you guys ever do have any questions, you can always pass them along to the team and I'd be happy to answer them for you. So for many years and still to this day, most of the research done around nutrition in the sporting world is done on men. However, women are very different. It's not as simple for us. We have our hormones that are fluctuating throughout the month. Our metabolism responds differently to training, and underfueling can affect us in different ways as well. So it's important to not just listen to the advice that men are being told. So that's what we're going to chat about today. And so, if you've ever dealt with this constant fatigue, even though you're training properly, consistently, taking rest days, if you're missing a period, have recurring injuries, you're not recovering properly, or feel like you're doing everything right, but still not improving, nutrition might be that missing piece. And I think for a lot of people, they assume, if they're having veggies, protein, and carbs and healthy fats, they're good to go. But when it comes to training and running, our needs change constantly. So firstly, I want to dive into our physiological needs. So, of course, female physiology is unique. So throughout our menstrual cycle, estrogen and progesterone, which are two of our main hormones, rise and fall. So estrogen is what builds that uterine lining, supporting your mood, bone health, skin, libido, and progesterone is produced in your ovaries after ovulation, preparing the uterine lining for a possible pregnancy. And both of these hormones are key, and they influence our carbohydrate metabolism, our fat metabolism, body temperature, hydration needs, recovery, protein needs, appetite, literally everything. And during our follicular phase of our cycle, that is basically the phase right after your period, women generally rely more on carbohydrates. And then during your luteal phase, which is 10 days before you bleed, we tend to burn more fat, so we'll have slightly higher energy needs then, and this is often when you are experiencing those cravings. So when you do have the cravings, it's important to nourish your body and listen to those cravings, because your body is telling you that you need more energy, especially as you're training. And if you're training for 3 months, you're going to be having 3 cycles, so we want to make sure that you're staying on top of your nutrition throughout. And when we're looking at the research, it suggests that our energy expenditure can increase by up to around 300 calories per day during that luteal phase. And it doesn't mean that you have to, track calories to hit that amount, but just maybe helps you understand, why some weeks you're feeling more hungry than others, and also at that same time, why some weeks you're feeling more stronger and energized compared to other weeks. And kind of diving into now the topic of underfueling and why it's so common. A lot of the time, people see on social media, online, a runner looking a certain way, and a lot of people will try to fit that quote unquote mold of having that runner's body. Another point to be added here is that sometimes our hunger and fullness cues are not so accurate. So a lot of times when we're pushing our body, our hormones can get a little out of whack. There's adrenaline, and sometimes after a hard, long workout, you might actually feel a little nauseous and like you're not hungry. But it's in those moments where it's important to have even the simplest things so that you are not getting into the habit of not eating after a run, because that will impact your recovery. And something that I see literally every single day is female runners coming in with chronic low energy availability. So it really means that their body is not getting enough energy to support their training needs, but also their normal physiological functions. So things like going to work, walking the dog around the block. And a lot of times, it can be unintentional. You're rushing in the morning, you don't have time to make a breakfast. So I see a lot of, skipping breakfast before morning runs, avoiding carbohydrates, because sometimes on social media it can be seen, people are saying, oh, cut carbs, and they can be seen as demonized, and for many years they were. But for runners, it's like our primary fuel source, so we want to make sure we're having our carbs. Then there's a lot of people who are also trying to lose weight while increasing mileage, which again is something you should never try to do when you're training for any kind of race, ranging from the 5K to the marathon. It does not matter the distance. The goal should not be weight loss, because you're pushing your body, you're going to need more energy. And then something else is delaying eating after workouts. I love going to get coffee with my friends after a workout. I love hanging out, but it's important to replenish around by the hour mark after your run. And so at first, the odd time you're skipping breakfast before a run and you're eating it after, avoiding carbs, and maybe in the short term it might be manageable for you, but over time this can, instead of improving performance, it can begin to cause deficiencies and leading to things like chronic fatigue, poor recovery, actually experiencing decreased endurance, increased injury risk, so seeing more stress fractures, frequent illnesses, disrupted hormones, so maybe you're losing your period or having an irregular cycle, reduced bone density. And over time, all of these things can actually lead to a condition called relative energy deficiency in sport. So REDS is something that is so much more than, that athletic performance. It impacts almost every single system on the body. And so for a lot of women, the early warning signs of REDS is your menstrual irregularity. So maybe you're skipping a cycle, or your period comes late, or it's only a day. And this is also important to note that this isn't the only sign. You can still struggle with REDS even if you do have a regular cycle, but for a lot of people this is the first sign that they'll see. And when we want to perform well and show up, it's important that we're fueling our bodies properly. So our muscles run on glycogen. And glycogen is the stored form of a carbohydrate. So your bread, bagels, pasta, all things like that. And if your glycogen stores are low, you're likely going to be running at slower paces. Your legs might feel heavy. You might fatigue earlier, have some difficulty completing those harder workouts, and also experience poor concentration in other aspects of your life. And, when this shows up, a lot of runners assume they just need to keep pushing and training harder, but a lot of times they just simply need to add an extra meal, add more to their meals, have that pre-run snack. Carbs are not the enemy. They're part of your body's, preferred fuel for that moderate to high intensity running. And of course, protein is also important. Especially after training, protein helps repair the muscle tissues, supports adaptation. So after a run, a workout, you want to make sure that you're having some protein and some carbohydrates within that first hour. And another food group that's super important would be your healthy fats. So dietary fats are key for hormone production. They are the backbone for your hormone health, as well as brain health and absorption of those fat-soluble vitamins. If you are taking certain supplements or vitamins, a lot of those need fat to be absorbed properly. And, healthy fats can be a challenging topic as well, because before a run or a race, you don't want to be having too much, just because when you're pushing yourself and when you have that intense exercise, it can be hard to digest healthy fats quickly. So that's why before a race or workout, you want to aim for more carbohydrates. Of course, I love to do, a bagel with a layer of almond butter and a banana on top, but just not doing too much of that, the healthy fats, because you don't want any GI dysfunctions on your run. Don't want to have to be stopping at those porta potties on the MGT. So yeah, taking more of that balanced approach. So rather than cutting out a food group, focusing on, what is your goal? If you want to be in running for the long term, then I highly recommend making sure that you're including all food groups and not cutting anything out at any point, especially while you're training. And now to kind of jump into our hormones. Hormones are very sensitive to energy availability. And when the brain senses that there's an inadequate intake of energy, it prioritizes survival mode over reproduction. And so this means your reproductive hormones may decrease. Like I said earlier, some runners may lose their menstrual cycle entirely. Others might experience irregular cycles or worsening PMS symptoms. And it's always important to remember that your menstrual cycle is a vital sign of health. A regular cycle tells us that your body has enough energy to support your normal physiological functions. And, on top of your cycle in your menstrual phases and all of that, having adequate nutrition also is key for your thyroid function, cortisol regulation, your mood, sleep quality, overall stress resilience. Of course, when you're training for runs, it's putting for races, whatever you're doing, whatever distance, it does put some stress on your body. And cortisol, which is your stress hormone, will rise. And there's also a lot of information online about cortisol being bad. You need a little bit of cortisol, otherwise you wouldn't get up in the morning. You wouldn't go for your run. You wouldn't get your butt to work in the morning. So everything in moderation. Of course, we don't want your cortisol through the roof because then you're going to be living in that fight or flight mode. But it is important to be fueling enough as well, because if you aren't eating enough, your cortisol will also remain elevated because your body is worried, like, oh no, am I going to be getting food? When's the next time I'm getting nutrients? So it goes into that fight or flight mode as well. And so, yeah, your nutrition and what you're eating really isn't just helping you to get faster, but it's also keeping your body healthy enough to continue to enjoy the sport and grow at the same time. And now shifting gears to that post-workout nutrition. A lot of people assume, recovery is just stretching, foam rolling, cold plunging, getting massages, going to physio, and all of those things. And while that's great, we also need to be mindful of nutrition. So like I said, within the first hour, you want to aim to have a meal or a snack containing both carbohydrates and protein. So some of my go-tos are oatmeal with protein powder, some blueberries, a little bit of nut butter. You can do Greek yogurt because there's protein in that, with some granola and some fruit. If you're more of a savory person, you could do eggs on toast. You can use some rice, chicken, and vegetables for more of a meal. And if you do struggle with eating after a run, I highly recommend doing a smoothie of some sort, and you can get a lot of great nutrients in there, and it's easier to consume because it's in liquid form. So you could do a smoothie with some fruits, some milk, yogurt, some oats. It's a great way to get some carbs in, but it's easier on the system for people who do struggle with really chewing and having that full-on bowl of oatmeal or sandwich or whatever it may be. And on top of that, hydration is also super key. So we need to focus on replacing those fluids, but also electrolytes, especially in the summer and after those longer runs. I always say electrolytes, you don't need to have every single day, but on those long run days, on the hot days, you should definitely be having some electrolytes, especially if you are a salty sweater. So a lot of times in summer training, you might notice that you have a layer of, it feels kind of like sandpaper. You might taste the salt on your face, see it if you open your phone camera. Make sure that you're replenishing your electrolytes. So your electrolytes are things like magnesium, potassium, sodium. Those are all needed to keep you energized, to keep you going, and also for muscle recovery. You might notice some excess cramping. Sometimes that can be an electrolyte imbalance, just not being hydrated enough. And yeah, that's kind of all that I had planned to chat about. Obviously, this is these topics, I feel like I touched on a lot of different things, can be further explored and looked into. Obviously, I just wanted to do kind of something on the surface level so that it wasn't too complex. But overall, I feel like the one takeaway is that fueling more is not the opposite of performance, and fueling properly is your performance. So, if you're ever questioning yourself, am I hungry? Should I have that snack? Always go for it and have that snack. And if you do experience that low appetite when you are in that intense training, rather than, following that, I think they call it like intuitive eating online, there's a difference between intuitive eating and like really listening to your body. So you might not be hungry for breakfast, but you know that breakfast is important for you and your goals, so you're going to have it. And yeah, even starting small, again, if you can't do that toast or bowl of oatmeal in the morning, I always recommend to the clients that I see to do like a spoon of honey, even just half a banana, something to at least we can build on that. And yeah, I'm wishing you guys all a super fun and exciting training block. I'm running the half marathon this year and I cannot wait. It's such a fun race. It's probably my favorite race. I ran the marathon in last year. That was my first ever marathon. Had the best time. And yeah, hope to see you at some of the training runs. And again, if you have any questions, I'm sure that it's okay with the team if you send them an email, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. But I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll talk to you all hopefully throughout the summer.